welcome to today's meet and greet for the book series. I didn't ask to think this way, I just do. This is a participating book series. My name is Veronica Slack. I am the author of this series. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of this book and what's going on with it now. And then I'm going to tell you what it has to do with you. So, okay, so to start off with, I gave everybody a piece of paper and a pen. And so this is kind of going to be, everything that I do is participating. So this is kind of going to be a participating meet and greet, okay? So you're very important to this part. So the paper that you have in front of you, what I want you to do is, as I go through this story, it's going to kind of move along rather quickly. So questions that you might have, I would like you to write them on the paper. At the end, I'll answer a couple of questions. However, all the questions that you might get, I want you to put on the paper because I will use them to help other people. So this whole project is about helping other people, helping ourselves, and yeah, so that's that. So that's what that piece of paper is. Gary, if you want to get yourself a piece of paper up here, and you're going to write any questions down. So you just grab one of them and a pen. Okay, so now, okay, before we really get started, I want to just ask you, you see this little picture here? So everybody knows what a timeout is, right? Okay, so we've heard there's a lot of different ideas, concepts about a timeout. Let me just go through a couple pictures here. So you see here, you have a little girl looking at a clock sitting backwards, right? So, you know, I suppose you could say, here you got a timeout, you know, getting us to discipline ourselves to stop. And then you have an umpire, timeout, red sign, okay, little kid in a timeout. I suppose a lot of it was people stopped, you know, hitting their children and saying, okay, I'm going to put you in a timeout. But as you can see, that didn't really go so well either. Children also kind of still were children. Okay, there's my favorite one right there. Okay, so what I want to tell you about this timeout is I want you to think about, let me close that out, and so that's fine. You can just do that while I'm talking. I'm used to interruptions all the time. All right, so where was I? So, about the timeout. So we're going to come back to this timeout at the end, but what I want you to do is, while I'm talking about things, at the end, I'm going to tie this back in. Don't let me forget, because I want you to think about what timeout means to you and your definition, whatever that concept is. Everybody has different thoughts on what things mean. Okay, so now I'm used to a lot of interruptions because we do a little recovery center down here at the I-75 flea market, and so we do a lot of different things down there. So we always have little interruptions. Like my friend here, D, he's from down there. He's cameraman today. All right, so here as we start our little meet and greet a little more, I'm going to just let you watch this.
Chattanoogians who came together in prayer this morning to unify those touched by addiction and recovery. Our own Eric Cooper shares the story of one woman who wants to further unite those participants by publishing her own methods of recovery. This morning, I met Veronica Slack. She's a former addict and now an author. Her books are aimed to bring those going through addiction recovery into the light and encourage them to write. A new day was welcomed by 300 people on the Walnut Street Bridge Sunday morning through a prayer for those touched by addiction.
It may only be a few seconds, but it's a lifeline for us.
Each of those 300 people have their own addiction story, and Veronica Slack wants to help them tell it.
up there. More families, yes.
Veronica has several other books in her collection, all aimed at helping the reader navigate the recovery journey. She's working to incorporate her books into nearby mental health, prison, and court system programs. Reporting in the studio, I'm Erin Cooper, News Channel 9.
Okay, so the thing that I would like you to take from that little clip is this. The recovery journals, okay, are for any person with any issue. It is not just for people who have are from a drug addiction or from alcohol or mental health. It is for any person who wants to journey to their heart and get to things at a heart level. So, and what happens is when you are participating in this, it's a collection, as you can see, but you are going to move at your own pace, and it's your story joined with mine, so it's a collaboration. If they want to just write a little book series, all the work's been done, they just have to add their part. And the last thing I want to say about that as well is the books are designed for any person, any belief, any gender, so it doesn't, it doesn't discriminate. Anybody can write this. Okay, so now to tell you a little bit about this book. Okay, so here we go. It's going to move a little bit quick. Okay, so the story of this book, it's my life, it's me. So it begins like this. My name is Veronica Slack. I was born February 22nd, 1965 in a mental institution. I was taken from my mother, and I spent the first 2 years of my life in Baltimore, Maryland with my Uncle Dominic and my Aunt March. They loved me very, very much. Now, before I go on, I want to say, in psychology, we learned that the first couple of years of a child's life is so important to that child's development. And if traumatic things happen, it causes things to transfer over into long term. So now, at the age of 2, having all this love from this family, at my father's request, I was returned home to my brothers and sisters. I was the youngest of 7. And I was returned to a family that was in chaos. In this family, I was beat, mentally tortured by my mother, and then I was molested by one of my older brothers. So it wasn't, it was not a good environment at all. So at an early age, my mother, as I said, had mental illness. So she made me her drinking buddy. The best that I could remember, I was around the age of 5 because I wasn't yet in school. But see, what I really remember about this is the first time that I quit drinking. Okay, I had been drinking with my mother, and she took me down to the corner bar with her in Philadelphia. It was summertime, so I was barefoot, and the bar wouldn't let me in. Okay, and so she left me outside. So as I was standing outside waiting for her, I started spinning really, really bad. And so I went over into the corner. It stunk horrible like urine because people had relieved themselves there. And I started to vomit, and I came out so forceful like a fountain. It went all over my feet, all over the walls, and it just kept coming until nothing came out except this horrible, horrible sound. And it scared me. I didn't know it was dry heaves, but it just scared me that this sound was coming out of me. And so I wouldn't touch alcohol again until I was about the age of 12, somewhere right around there. So now, around the age of 12, my parents had divorced, somewhere in there. And we were living with my father. My father was a truck driver. He worked all the time. And so my brothers and sisters ran the household, and it was the after-school party house where everybody came to and partied. So I went right along with what everybody else was doing, and I partied. Nobody twisted my arm. It was just, I didn't know anything else. That's just what we did. So I started to get into a little bit of trouble during that time as well. But during that time, I started to write. I started to write my pain on paper. I wrote good things too, but it was mostly my struggles, the things that were going on inside of me. So my dad, you know, he used to take pride. He had this in this bar he had in the house, and I used to collect the bottles and the empty bottles and the boxes, because I thought they were really neat looking, and I would decorate my room with them and put them around in my room. So then what I started doing was I started putting my writings inside the boxes because I thought they were neat, and I called them my liquor box albums. I was music illiterate, so there was no notes on the paper. It was just my paint on the paper, but they meant everything to me, and they were helping me. So now, in high school, in 9th grade, I took theater arts, and in theater arts, it was like such a relief for me. So in that class, we were, you know, creatively writing things, and I wrote this skit. And the skit that I wrote was to the song Teenage Wasteland, Baba O'Reilly, it's actually called, from the rock band The Who. So I took this song and I did a mime, white face, black clothes, and you don't have no props, one. They let us have one, so I had a desk. So what I did was, so the story went like this. The girl was really happy. She was talking to her boyfriend on the phone, and then he breaks up with her and crushes her. And she goes on a road of destruction. And she starts off drinking beer. Then she goes to hard liquor. She goes from the hard liquor, because that doesn't kill the pain, and she starts smoking pot. That doesn't work. She takes pills. Then she goes on to progress to snort lines of drugs. When that doesn't work, the music hits this spot where it goes into like a spin, and she goes and she decides she's going to shoot drugs. She shoots the drugs, and as the music is spinning, she drops to the ground. And when she drops to the ground, she's, in like in a crazy state. There's a knock on the door. The boyfriend comes to the door with flowers to make up with her. And then she realizes, that's my boyfriend, and she starts to crawl to the door. And then she realizes she's not going to make it. And as she reaches for the doorknob, she dies. Well, I was 14 years old, not to say, I'm pretty sure I shocked my teacher that her 14-year-old student displayed this. But she was very impressed with it, and she asked me to perform it before the entire high school in the evening. So I did. Ironically, that skit foreshadowed the destructive road that I was already on. See, in my mind, I was 14, and it was like, wow, rock music, I'm going to do all this stuff in the world, and all these hopes and all these dreams I'm going to do, and that is not what happened. It was shortly after that I met Bernie, and Bernie was an IV drug user. I was 15, he was 19 years old, and I fell in love with him. He was everything to me, and you could not separate us. At the age of 16, I got pregnant by Bernie, and I dropped out of school. At the age of 17, I had my daughter, and my beautiful baby girl. I loved her so much. She was like, I was young, so she was like my little baby doll, so I loved to do everything for her. But that love was not strong enough to stop the destructive road that I was on. So I went from doing absolutely nothing to being an IV drug user at the age of 17. And then I spiraled out of control. By the time I hit 18, while my friends were graduating from high school, I was graduating to being a junkie. I had tracks up and down my arms. I would wear long sleeves to hide my arms. And then between the age of 19 and 25, I turned into a monster. Addiction took a really ugly turn, and I became everything that I hated. Everything that I said that I would never want to be. I lied to people, I cheated people, I stole from people. I became of a criminal mind, so everything was just out of control. So during this time, I was taking my daughter through this with me. So it was November 1991. No, I'm sorry, November 1990, is when everything came to a stop, when I got locked up. things that I was doing. By this time, I was strung out. I didn't even feel the drugs anymore. I was just running from the withdrawal and finding ways and means to get more from that. But I got locked up, and when I got locked up in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, they were going to take my daughter, so I had my daughter with me. And I hadn't felt anything in years inside, but I did love my daughter. And when my daughter saw me, she screamed, "Mommy, Mommy," and she came running to me with her arms wide open like I was the best thing in the world to her. And I dropped to my knees, and I hugged her, and I said, "Brenda, I am so sorry for showing you this kind of a life." And I said, "But remember, I told you that one day things were going to change. And today is that day. I want you to hold on and be strong. I'm coming back for you." They took my daughter and they took me off to jail. So now, when they took me to jail, I knew I was going to be really sick the next morning. And they took me in front of the judge, and so I knew when the judge started reading my charges, I knew that I wasn't going anywhere. So I decided to fake a seizure in the courtroom, and I threw myself on the courtroom floor, and I started shaking all over the place. They took me to the hospital, and they induced, back then, it was a long time ago, so things were still on trial, and they administered, I'm pretty sure it was Narcan, and it ate all the drugs out of my body, and I went into an extremely violent withdrawal. Next day, they took me back to that judge, that same judge, and I was a total mess. My hair was all knotted up, my clothes was all disabled, and I was just very, very sick. And that judge saw straight through me, and he stipulated me to a rehab. So I went to the rehab, and in this rehab, they introduced me to the disease of addiction that I had. They started educating me and telling me things like, "No, Veronica, you went too far. You crossed all the lines that there are to cross, so you can't disconnect this, disease of addiction from you. You're going to have to take care of yourself." And I thought, okay, well, I can understand that for the drugs, but not with the alcohol. Because I didn't really abuse the alcohol, it was just the drug. Veronica, alcohol is a drug. So they continued to teach me and tell me different things, right? Well, they were helping me out a lot. They get a call that Bernie, the staff there, got a call that Bernie was found dead of a drug overdose in the streets of Philadelphia. He lay 10 days in the morgue before he was identified. I collapsed in sorrow, okay? And because I was court stipulated, I couldn't just go to the funeral on my own, so they took me, escorted me to this funeral. And I will tell you, Bernie and I, we went on a road of destruction, destroying everything. So I wasn't like, a welcoming party. It was, she goes, like, look what they've done, And I didn't care, because the only thing I wanted to do was to say goodbye to him, because I loved him. So I went in there, I walked straight to that casket, I laid my head down on his chest. I didn't care who was in there. I was saying my goodbye to him. I ran my hands through his hair, and I told him how sorry I was that we had gotten so messed up in drugs, and that I was so sorry that he didn't make it out alive. And then I promised him, as we do to people that we love, I promised him that I would stay clean for both of us. And then I went back to that rehab, and I finished that program. So when I finished that program, I entered into a transition. See, that program had given me support that was helping me out so much. And then on this side, of me, in the real world, there was a whole lot of support, but I was going to have to make the effort to get it. And then there was me in the middle. I was like a diamond in the rough. I didn't know who the hell I was, and I didn't have the faith in myself to think that I could do this. But they told me to take myself right to a meeting, and that's what I did. I went to a meeting, a 12-step meeting, and then I got connected in with the people there, and I started going to the meetings, and and I relapsed. And then I went to some more meetings, and then I relapsed. And then the thing in my head was the people in the meeting said, keep coming back. No matter what, you keep coming back. I didn't have anywhere else to go because Bernie was gone, and here I was. I didn't know how to live my life, and these people were telling me to keep coming back. Well, I kept coming back, but then I hit this place inside, early in my recovery, probably under 30 days, where I was still grieving Bernie, and I felt like he left me in a rat race by myself, and I got in my head, and with the drugs and all this world, and it was like, I don't want to be here anymore. So I made a decision to go down to Philadelphia and buy the drugs that he did. And then I went home, and the next morning, it was June 7th, actually, 1991. And on that date, there was a knock on the door. And a person that I had been in rehab stopped by to take me to a meeting. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to go to a meeting with you. I'm just going to go in here and take a shower. And I was lying. I went in there to do them drugs. Well, this is where God has a plan, and he doesn't ask you if you agree with it. Because when I did them drugs, I fell out. At that moment, the phone rang. It was my daughter wanting to talk to me. That recovering person said he was already suspicious of me, so he knocked on the bathroom door. And when I didn't answer, he broke the door down. And he said I was laying there dead with a needle hanging out of my arm. And it freaked him out. He panicked. And he called another recovering person that lived right down the street, and then he called the paramedics. They said that my eyes were wide open, I wasn't breathing, I had no pulse. And I'll tell you, I did have an experience that day with my high power that I will never forget. But no matter how sacred that experience was to me, one thing was clear. I had a choice to make while I was here. I was either going to be a junkie, because it wasn't changing, I was here. I was either going to be a junkie, or I was going to go down the road of recovery. So the paramedics came, they gave me that Narcan and took me to the hospital. When I got back that evening, that was to change the course of my life. It was two recovering people that were there. One of them came up into my brother's apartment where I was living, and he got a hold of me. And he spoke to me in such a way that only another person who had been through a living hell could speak. And he said this. He said, Veronica, I don't know if you realize it or not, but you effing died today. You hear me? You died. You weren't here anymore. And it's a miracle that you're standing here. And I'm telling you, if you don't start working with your sponsor, if you do not surround yourself with recovering people and make more meetings, you're going to be back out on the streets in 5 days, within 5 days, and you might not be lucky enough to make it back in here. Well, his words to me were like, I don't know, whatever clicked in my head that day, but the unconditional love that was being extended to me, it just sank in. And it broke the chain of addiction that it had on me in that transition, and it pushed me right out of that transition into full-blown recovery. And from that point forward, I didn't care what I had to do. Tell me to stand on my head, do whatever I had to do. I was a recovering person. I was going to do. So I moved in with my sponsor. I surrounded myself with recovering people. I took the suggestions, and I started to thrive. I started to have a life. So weeks turned into months, turned into years. I got my daughter back. I got a job. I got a trade, a CDL, and things just started happening. They helped me put Bernie into a perspective that I could pull strength from. So I married a man in recovery. We had a daughter, and life was happening. But one of the most important things that happened was I found my hopes and my dreams came back, and I started to write all kinds of stuff. So I wrote this screenplay called Death Warrant, a little bit dark with my writing. But she's an action hero. But so I took it up to New York to show it to somebody, and my sponsor went with me, and we took the train up to New York. So on the train ride up, we were going through some step work, and she noticed that I kept putting these little writings inside my step work, and she read them, and she said, Veronica, these are really good. You should write a book. She planted a seed. So it was a short time later that I went to Barnes & Noble, and I bought this book right here. I bought it because it was fuzzy, it was cheated, it was empty, and it was like parchment paper inside. It was really, really neat. Had this little string, and I was like, oh yeah, that'd be a nice book. And I started putting everything in there. And then one day I was up in New York. I was a limo driver too, truck driver, limo driver, and I was up in New York waiting on people, and I was writing this story, this article about lifespan, and I got stuck. And I started arguing with God, and I was like, God, why would you give me all this stuff and then not give me a way to get it out of me and not give me encouragement? And I got mad, and I go in my bag, and I pull my book out, and I started to write it in there, and it was like I saw something that meant so much to me, that was so personal, so private, that I would want to share with other people. So I took that book, I continued writing, I took that book, and in my mother-in-law's living room with some other addicts and some church people, we made this first version, and I started to give it out to friends and different people. And one day, the way I got the title was, again, I was arguing with my higher power, I was arguing with God, and I was like, I didn't ask to think this way. I just did. I'm like, as soon as I said, that's the name of the book. So then it went through these versions of it, but it was like in poetic form. So I kept writing, but I was on fire at this time for recovery. So I had some other stuff going on, and I founded a 12-step program called RTC 12-Step Ministries. And in this, it was a 12-step meeting that was open to all people. I televised it. I had an anonymous section, and then I did transportation because I was a driver. My boss at the limo company had a limo bus, and he let me use the limo bus to go ahead and pick the recovery houses up, and we would have a great meeting. I filmed it. They signed papers, and they talked on it, and it's on here. So I had to make a choice at that time. It was pursue the book or the people. So I said to God, I made a commitment to my higher power. I said when I was in my 50s that I would edit the books so I could just live my life now, and that's what I did. I stayed in recovery, I lived my life, and I did the things that I wanted to do. Now, we moved down here to Tennessee, and we started our business. I got plugged into my recovery meetings and all this stuff. I had a nice trucking company, and life on life's terms happened. And my dump trailer door swung backwards and smashed my head against the side of the trailer. So I broke all the bones in this side of my face, split my face in half, and got brain damage. I lost a lot of my physical things, but we also as a family lost our home, we lost our business, and everything I had attained in recovery was gone. It was during that time, just before that accident, that I was scheduled to take my GED, because in recovery we learn to better ourselves, right? So I went and I took that test. Now, even though on the outside I couldn't function, right, my brain was still alive, things were still working. So I went and I took that GED test, and after I took that test, this little light bulb went off inside, and I was like, I got a plan for recovery from my accident. I'm going to become a full-time college student. And that's what I did. I came here to this college, and I went to the disabilities office, and the people over there made all the accommodations that I needed to help me succeed in my schooling. And after class, I spent most of my time in that soundproof box that they have over there. I did all my testing, everything over there, and it helped me so much. So in 2012, I graduated with an associate and a bunch of summa cum laude, got the Excellent Award from, the Social and Behavior Science, and I went on to UTC. My daughter tested into this college at the same time, so we were going to school a little bit And when I went down there, I had to make a decision. Two of us in college, I needed to go back to work. So I withdrew and I went back to work. 2014, me and my daughter got hit head on by a car, okay? And I regressed in my head injury. I came back here and went to school for aesthetics, and I got a license in that. 2015, me and my daughter, again on our way to campus, got hit on 153 from behind, and I regressed further. And now I go into meetings, I'm really, really upset because this was not how I planned for my life to be. And I share about it, and someone comes up to me after the meeting and they say, Veronica, I'm so sorry that this stuff keeps happening to you, but this is what I did when I was disabled. I got into little projects around the house. So I say thank you. And I go home. And I don't want to get into little projects around the house. I want my life back, and I'm angry. And I sit down on the floor and I write this letter to God. And I pour my heart out. I cry my eyes out, and I wind up in a ball on the floor crying. And when I get done, I get up and I take that suggestion because I don't know what else to do. And as I'm going through little projects, I come across this box, and when I open the box, there they are, all my books and manuscripts, and the one that has to get revised. And it overwhelms me, and I go back to the meeting. When I get back to the meeting, I say, what's going on? And then this person comes up to me after the meeting who happens to be a professor. And he says this to me. He said, Veronica, all you have to do is start that first page, and the rest will come to you. So I go home because I really have a lot of respect for this person, and I start that first page, and it opens up the door for me to remember my heart's desire to connect with people from all walks of life. Then I also remember the commitment I made to God all them years ago, that when I was in my 50s, that I would edit the books, and I was now in my 50s. Then I also realized I now have enough education that I could edit the books, and I would have help from my daughter. So I took book 1 and I revised it. I revised it with pictures of me talking to you, talking to God, contemplating life from bridges and crossroads and steps. And I made visuals, two pictures, underlying picture, and another picture. They're like the book is like a puzzle. One page has nothing to do with the other page, but it's a distraction from things that you're going through. Then I took this book and I divided it into 3 volumes. And then I thought about all my years in recovery, and I picked the very simple things that helped me. And I built them into recovery journals that other people could co-write. My daughter and I edited the books, did all the photography, and started the uphill road to get them into circulation by giving them to friends, family, institutions out here in Silverdale, some of our local rehabs. And 2017, I launched the series from that rehab, Eagleville, Pennsylvania, which was, wow, it was an awesome experience to be back there all them years later. And now since then, it's been continuing to grow. I don't know if somebody can come up here and help me get this up here because I had it, but it's been continuing to grow. So how it's grown is I made this available for people because I took all the excuses away. So you can either follow along from home privately, or every day I put a journal up on Facebook. You can go to the website. Here it is. The website, everything is interactive to where you can see my story up here. There's a recovery blog. There is the journals, and you can follow along and build your books at home. So it's interactive. So that's going on. The books are still, I'm doing what I can to get these into our institutions. We have these ones that are for like detoxes, drug court, and these different places. It's been really hard, I'll be honest with you, to get them into places. But I'm happy that, for the couple of places that they're in right now. But we don't give up. And so then, as I said, the last thing that I wanted to say was tied back into you guys was with So with the timeout, so I want you to see this. This here is all the journals. These are not all the books. There's books that are still in manuscript, but these are journals. So when you think of timeout, what I'd like you to think of is a different thing of timeout, a positive, a really positive thing with timeout. As you see this chair, let me see if I can just go this way. This chair, that chair. I'd like you to think of it as a platform, the chair as a platform for you to tell your story. Because our story is us, right? But in journals, in this simple form that I have here, all the work is done. One page at a time, as that professor said, you know, and so I'm planting the seed the same way as my sponsor has said to me. But the cool and neatest thing about these journals is you can travel back and you can see your own story, and you will pull strength. I'm telling you, you will pull strength from it, because I do. This is me. This is the road that I've had, and I can go back and just look at the different things that led up to me being who I am today. And it helps me when, if you know, you don't know what might happen. You could have an accident or something. You know, my own books have helped me remember some of the things that I went through that I had forgotten. And we take the time, that 5 minutes a day. I miss the time when we've got our phones, we've got so much social media, so much stuff going on, and it's so easy to get lost and caught up and not have time. Well, we could learn a lot from a child. You know, that child, when they sit in that chair, they're struggling because every fiber in them doesn't want to be in that chair. But the adults and the people that are around are telling him that they have to be there. Well, in recovery, we learn that I want to sit in this chair because I want to live. And I'm worth it. And I'm going to take that time to center myself. And 5 minutes, you will be surprised what comes out of you in 5 minutes. And in these journals, you know, it's written simply for you. You're co-writing the whole journal. It starts off on page 7. You dedicate the book to who you want to. I dedicated it to God. It goes day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. There's a little meditation, and then you get creative. You add to it. You relate to it. When we relate, find one word. Find one word. That's all it takes. You can build it, and then it'll ask you a positive question, and then on this side, it's keeping it really simple for you. It says, this is on my mind today. Every day, something is on our mind. Something's going on. And you know, in the beginning, you might be topical. But what happens is, I have seen people using these journals that they mean so much to them because it's them. Then as you go through this journal, you come across pages like this. These are called the creative art pages. These are for days when you don't want to journal. You might want to doodle. You might want to write a poem, a song, or maybe someone gave you something inspirational. You want to take in here. It's your book. You're building it. And then when you get to the back, you sign and you go on to the next volume. The cool thing about these books is it's a now book, so whatever's going on, you move from today. So it's also designed for you to move at your own pace. So if you got up to day 15 and 3 months went by, when you come back, you go to day 16. You go to where you left off, because there's no pressure. It's your life. You know, you do it how you want to do it. And you are the other half of that. And you're worth it. So if that's pretty much the story of this book. And there's a lot more to my story, but you got to hear that little piece of it today. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them now. You can go to the website and you can get journals directly through the website, recoveryjournals.org. I think in that little pamphlet that I gave you there, right to this, you can navigate to shop, and you can get the books. It'll get mailed right to you there. And just the last thing I want to say is, you begin with Journal Volume 1. This little book is meant to be for when you're troubled, You know, you thumb through it randomly at any page. You can also, at the beginning, it has headings under hurting, hard-headed, or too busy. You can go right to them if you're feeling that way. But this book is the sum of all the 3 journals, so you can follow along in pictures too. You can, like, if you're journaling on day 25, it's up here in volume 1, 2, or 3. You can follow along and say, okay, what's that person saying? So that's it. That's all I have. Thank you for coming here today. And if anybody have any questions or anything? Well, I'll start you off with one question. Sometimes that people have asked me, they ask me, how long does volume 1 can it take? So again, I said it, you move at your own pace, but if you were dedicated to doing it, it would take you anywhere, say, from 4 months to a year to get through that book. These little books are 31 days of volume 1, so they're kind of like the intro, or they're for like maybe detoxes, things that have a faster moving pace, or if somebody's in hospice or something like that and they want to, have something to do. So. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. So we were going to give out a number of books. So when I pick them, if I call your name, come up here. There's 2 piles, either one. It is the same contents inside. It's just that when we go into institutions, we try to, just make things available for everybody.
So do you want to?
Yes.
Were most of your pictures that you took for the book, were they taken like in Chattanooga?
Yes. Yeah, some were here on campus, some were at the Walnut Street Bridge, the Veterans Bridge, downtown, Harrison Bay State Park, all of it. So people will recognize the background. Trail of Tears is in there. There's the bridge there. Hunter, there's one from Hunter Museum. But yes.
I'm mixing them up a little bit, shuffling.
Yeah.
I'm Gary, and I'm gonna say something about her journal. I've read some of her journal, and I am a recovering addict myself of almost 20 years now. We all mask our feelings. We mask these emotions. We hide behind things that we don't want to get out. And it's helped me to understand about honesty, about spiritual principles that we have to try to live on a daily basis, like acceptance, faith, hope, integrity. It goes on, self-discipline. And what this does, it helps you to get up. It's masking these feelings, masking emotions out, because that's what I did for 23 years of my life, was mask the feelings and emotions. I didn't have no identity. And this is the reason why it's important that institutions and everyone can use this journal, because it's really helpful, but it's education that we need more of as far as the epidemic of opioids or drugs itself, because you probably have some here that are addicts that just don't want to, they close up. It's important that it gets out, the news gets out, because it's just not just a journal, but it's not just surviving. That was a meditation day, but it's learning how to live life and enjoy life. And I know what it's like. I mean, my story's a little bit different from hers. Hers started at a young age. Mine started as an adult, and I had to bury stuff for 22 years of a rape. I'll just go and say it. There's with the drugs and alcohol. It impairs us from life itself. And all this wants to do is, I wanted to die, but today I want to live. It's because of, I don't have to match these feelings and emotions anymore, because I do have a better way to live today. And life is so grand. And I need to see this stuff. These institutions, these prisons, some of them never going to be able to get out. I've done some work in prisons. I speak at a lot of places, a lot of colleges. I spoke up here last week, a week and a half ago, of what addiction, but it's just anything in this to find a better way of life, or find a better way to express ourselves. If it's not to someone, but at least you're writing it down. It gives you a better perspective of life. That's all I got.
Thanks, Gary. And going along with what Gary was saying there, in this journal, when you are journaling on your side, it gives you two feelings charts, two alternating feelings charts in here, and then a space for you to write your own feelings. It gives you a little daily planner, and then it also, your little note to your higher power, to whatever it is that you believe. So, again, it's keeping things really simple, but a lot of times people don't know how to identify their feelings, and this feeling chart happens to have positive and negative, not just, just not the one, so that we, like he was talking about spiritual principles, so that you get another choice, and you get to see that. Okay, let's pick some of these. Okay, so when you come up, there's two books there on the front table. There's the same content, it's just one has praying hands and one has fog. So we're going to pick several of these here. So the first one is going to be Maria Callis.
Very close.
Callis? Callis, okay. Come on down. Get you some recovery.
That's right.
And if you can't use it, you may have a family member or somebody else or someone struggling that you can give it to. Okay, then we have Danielle Knowles.
Getting all library people. It's fixed.
And Lauren Beatty.
Yay.
All right.
Okay.
Was that 1, 2, 3, 4? I'll go 6 or 7. Is that
Cassie.
Cassie?
Yeah, Cassie. Yay. She's a library person.
And Dwight.
Oh, I think that was 5.
Yeah, I know.
She's gonna do 6.
I'm gonna do 3 more. We got Ariana Keller.
Yay. She's a library student assistant.
Cindy Shirley.
Yay.
All right. This will be the last one. And this is Carla.
Yay.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Class dismissed.
Your liquor bottle, owl.
Yeah, well, see, the thing was, I didn't have a liquor